Maddy Glab here with Cynthia Frelund from NFL Network. Cynthia, thanks so much for helping me break down this matchup between two high-powered offenses that have really gotten deep into the playoffs because of the way they play on offense. And we've seen their defenses come alive in the playoffs too, which has been also really interesting to see, especially for the Bills against the Ravens and the Chiefs defense against the Browns. Wow, those are two defenses that really help both of these teams propel them into the AFC Championship game. But when you look at this matchup and you think about all the things that are going to go into this game and all the facets, the three phases of the game, what are some of the first things that you think about when you look at both teams and what they're able to provide, what their strengths are, both on offense and defense?
Well, I'm obviously going to start with the Bills' strength because I've been so impressed with this Bills team all season long. I feel like I'm from Michigan, so I guess I was born a Lions fan, which is a horrible thing, but I feel like the spirit of the Bills is like what everyone needs for 2020. What did you expect? And then you expected good in the beginning of the season. There was some great hopefulness. And then this is so great. And 3 years ago, who would have thought we would be sitting right here, having this conversation? You did not know how great Josh Allen would be. All these things are great. So the one thing that I think is a really big mismatch in favor of the Bills is really Stefan Diggs' presence with this banged up secondary. We saw Bashaud Breeland last game. He went out. I don't know if he's playing or not. Rashad Fenton, they keep, repeat. They're on the injury report all week long. I can speak English. But ultimately, that's going to be a problem, not just when Stefan Diggs is a subject of the target, right? Because he obviously 2 routes in the NFL. He has the most yards on each route. That's unheard of. Most people, maybe it's 1 route and maybe they don't use a lot. But he also has 8 touchdowns on 8 different routes, which is tied for the most in the NFL as well. So not just when he's the subject of the target, but also the opportunity it creates for the other pass catchers, right? So if he's drawing the attention of Honey Badger, which is presumably going to be asking a lot of this extra safety, bringing some safety help if the corners are banged up, then it's really going to open up the opportunity for Gabriel Davis, who we've seen come on. And obviously Cole Beasley, he's been on the injury report too, but it's interesting to see kind of the other opportunities. But Stefan Diggs makes a gigantic difference. Obviously, he led the regular season in receptions, but it's not because he's not, he's the beneficiary of some other help. It's actually Stefan Diggs. He's creating all of it. So that's going to be an interesting way that's going to really kind of shape the offense for Josh Allen and the Bills for sure.
And then when you look at the Chiefs and their season that they've had, and the Bills, they started off the season good. They're winning games, but you've really seen them hit their stride since week 9. Their average margin of victory has been 16.2 points. And then the Chiefs, they start out super hot. Of course, they finished the season super hot as well. But since week 9, their average margin of victory is only by 4 points. So what are some of the first things that you think of when you look at this Chiefs offense and defense as of late?
Well, first of all, I love that you're bringing the numbers to me because I'm a numbers person. So
I love numbers.
really speaking to my soul here. But the interesting part about, obviously, look, Patrick Mahomes being on the injury report, somewhat questionable, that changes a lot of things. Now, if you look back to week 6, their first matchup between these two teams, you saw something really interesting from Leslie Frazier. They didn't blitz once, not even once. It's the first time in all of the Next Gen Stats history that a team did not blitz a quarterback, not one time. So they dropped into coverage. They didn't bring an extra rush. And what happened is then the Chiefs ran the ball. Well, you know who else has been banged up? Well, that's been Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Lev Bell has been on the injury report. It's very unclear who exactly is going to be on the field. And by the way, even if they're on the field, does that mean that they're healthy and ready to go? So it's going to be a lot of interesting dynamics. So I love this chess match between how to stop Patrick Mahomes and I think he's going to play, but so how to stop quarterback for the Chiefs. Let's say it's very, very likely Patrick Mahomes. How to stop that situation. The real question will be, how do we take the pieces of Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill, and how do we assess who gets to stop each one of them, right? And when I look to break that down, Travis Kelce is a mismatch. Part of the area where the Bills defense has some vulnerability is right where Travis Kelce likes to go. He also, like Stefan Diggs, has a bunch of different nice metrics around which routes he runs and how many yards he's earned per route. So yes, he's a tight end, and we all know he's a pass catching tight end, but he's super efficient with the yards after the catch as well. So that's going to be an area like shoring that up is going to be a really big deal. So how do they bring over the help? What happens there on that chess match there? And then, by the way, accounting for Tyreek Hill as well. So it's going to be interesting to see. Do they take the strategy of not blitzing? I thought that was brilliant, by the way. Like, force them to run, and obviously what happened, but like, it was a good strategy. It was very, very sound because, by the way, Patrick Mahomes, it's true, against not the blitz, he's had worse results over the course of his whole career. So it was a really smart strategy. It just, in that case, it didn't work out. Now, will that be the case this time? It's super interesting.
Yeah, I'm really interested about the Bills' game plan because Leslie Frazier is one of the best defensive coordinators. I think his ability to game plan against a team and shut down their strengths is completely unmatched because anytime we have played the Chiefs or the Ravens, they've came out with a great game plan that gives the Bills a chance. Last year against the Ravens, the Bills' offense couldn't show up. This year against the Chiefs, it was also a struggle for the Bills offense in week 6. And they had that chance in the fourth quarter. They were down by 6 points with 6 minutes left to go. Chiefs kick a field goal. Then the Bills throw an interception and the game is over. So after that game, Sean McDermott was asked about the game plan and people are like, was this what you wanted to do? Did you want the Chiefs to run for 245 yards? And he was like, yes, that was the game plan. And hey, they racked up the yards, but we had a chance. We could not do anything with that chance, unfortunately, but I wanted us to have a chance, and we had that. So I am super interested to see if they take some parts from that, because I would guess they have to. And Travis Kelce had 2 touchdowns, yes, but his numbers and receiving yards and Tyreek Hill weren't off the stat sheet. I think about another thing is Travis Kelce and Matt Milano are going to be the matchup. Matt Milano was not healthy for that week 6 matchup. He was out, and so they were using A.J. Klein, a guy who is great against the run, but he can't drop into coverage like Matt Milano, who's a former safety from high school, can. So hopefully that's going to go a little bit better for the Bills on that end, and they can limit Travis Kelce, maybe no touchdowns. But your numbers, Gal, so when you're looking at the numbers and kind of the eye-popping analytics of this matchup, what are some of the couple things that stand out to you?
Well, first of all, I have to point out, because I went to Boston College and like almost nobody in the NFL did, maybe Matt Ryan, right? But Matt Milano, great Boston College grad, I love it. So I'm glad to see he's back. He's been fun to watch, basically since BC for me. But one of the things that the Chiefs, so this one isn't as eye-popping because most people are game plan have to throw the ball against the Chiefs. So if you look to see what their defenses face, they face a lot more passing situations because think of the game script. If they're playing from behind, you have to pass. You can't really run the ball as efficiently or effectively. So one of the areas that the Chiefs are kind of, I'm going to use the word sneaky bad at, like they're not, that the stat sheet is really lying to you. They can give up yards on the ground. The run is going to be key because it just, think about it. If in the second half you have to throw a lot because you're playing from behind, which many teams have had to with the Chiefs, you can't really run it. Your run's less efficient, etc. But if you look to see that one game where where the Raiders beat them, and the stat sheet will show that Josh Jacobs had like 3.5 or 3.4 yards per rush. But don't look at it like that. Look to see on those downs, it set up third and manageable. So that on those third downs, it maybe didn't have the most effective or efficient first and second down, but you're like third and, in a situation where you're, 3rd and 2. So you have both the pass and the run available to the Raiders. And then, by the way, then they took the deep ball, which Josh Allen is very good at balancing run, deep ball, run, deep ball, right? Like you've seen that happen. And another interesting thing is that the Chiefs, they don't really bring a lot of heat. So in terms of pressuring opposing quarterbacks, they rank bottom 10 in the league, right? All season long, they have not been getting pressure. They drop into coverage. Their strategy is not to go force the hand up front. It's to drop into coverage, wait, and then see what happens. Well, that's not really going to be a good game plan because Josh Allen has improved so significantly from a clean pocket. So that's kind of like the next gen stat way of saying like when he doesn't have pressure on him, right? So when he's not facing pressure, not going to be a good thing for the Chiefs. So it's going to be interesting to see if they change that and maybe have Chris Jones like really try to attack that front and bring some pressure or not. So that's going to be an interesting strategy because the Chiefs have been effective dropping back into coverage. But again, it's game plan because they're playing with a lead. If you're playing with a lead, you play more prevent defense. You don't necessarily go bang them in the teeth, right? You want to go kind of step back. Maybe you give them 5 yards to not give them 15, right? So it's a sacrifice of that. So it's going to be interesting because that could play right into the Bills' strengths, right? Like, don't give Josh Allen time in the pocket if you're an opposing defense. It's not going to go well for you. Like it's not going to go well for you this season.
And one thing, he has increased so much against the blitz too. In the beginning of the season, his numbers against the blitz weren't that great. And now in the second half of the season, they have grown a lot. And so defenses really have to choose, am I going to drop or I'm going to blitz? Am I going to throw different things at you? And I keep thinking back to the week 6 matchup because both teams are going to take things from that matchup into this matchup, as well as being able to watch what has unfolded for each team after week 6. But when they faced each other in week 6, Josh Allen had such a hard time on passes of 10 or more yards. He was 3 of 10 for like 47 yards, which is not his MO, which means like he was thrown off by the coverages, by the looks they were throwing him. And Stefan Diggs and Cole Beasley had down numbers too, and they really couldn't get anything going on the pass or on the ground. So how do you think Josh can find success in this matchup? I know you've touched on it a little bit already, but what are some of the things that you think are going to come into play if they decide to drop guys into coverage? Will Stefan Diggs be able to have more than 46 yards even when they dropped guys in the coverage last time?
So the interesting thing for me is that part of week 6, just for every team in the NFL, remember when we have no preseason, you don't get the chance to understand things that aren't like Josh Allen knows all of the Bills plays, right? Like he knows all of the defensive plays too and looks. But when you're trying to adapt, and by the way, Andy Reid, like that whole, like their offense and defense, these are good coaches. We're so lucky to see such a great game between such great, like smart minds on every side. So they try to trick people. And realistically speaking, the first 4 weeks of the season, think about it, offenses had quite a bit of an advantage because, defense has to adapt to whatever the offense is giving them. Well, then, these teams who have a lot more continuity, meaning the same players playing together, and the Chiefs had the highest continuity, same people who took the majority of snaps playing in the league. So in my opinion, part of that is because their defense didn't have that getting to know you phase that a lot of people had to really, you saw with many teams, like they went through some weird slumps like week 6 through 8, because they're starting to figure out the defenses and things that would have been a little more lockstep in the beginning. Usually we see about a month in the beginning of the season. People talk about it. You're in the AFC East, like the Patriots in September look always different than right. Like we've heard this before, but now it's like every team in the league based on the nuances of 2020. So the interesting part about week 6 to me, when I look back and I look to see, everything that happened, it's more about, I think like the offense had an advantage for a month, and then the defense has sort of got a chance to catch up, especially defenses that had played well together. Look at the Steelers. Their defense was nasty, like until they got a lot of injuries, right? And then it started to pick up, and the good teams, the cream started to rise to the top. So the interesting part for the matchup, when I look to see back and what they've learned since then, is really trying to figure out like where the areas that they're going to be more or less turnover prone, because no matter what, it comes down to keeping the ball in your hands or not, or taking it away from the other people, right? So that's where I think what you saw was kind of that like growing pain of the season that you typically would see in maybe like a September. I think it just got shifted out a bit because of all of the weird, Stefan Diggs and Josh Allen, I think their first pass thrown game speed was, the first game. So you have to imagine there's some getting to know you, vibes that happen. And then once the defenses start to pick it up, and look, Josh Allen's still young. He's awesome. Don't get me wrong, but it's not like he's seen every defensive look in the entire business. Tom Brady hasn't seen every defensive look. They try to trick him and it works. So so to me, it's a little bit of growing pains too. I look back and I watch that game, and the strategy and the plan's great, but an untimely turnover changes everything in every game. So now it's about minimizing those opportunities to turn the ball over.
Yeah, 100%. Turnovers are so important, especially in the playoffs, taking care of the football. I mean, every head coach is going to say that. And thankfully, the Bills have not turned the ball over, have not had any giveaways yet in the playoffs. It's their first streak ever in Bills history where they've had no turnovers in multiple
Keep it up.
straight games.
Keep
So
it up. Got to
I
keep it
know,
up.
keep it up into this matchup, because whoever is taking care of the ball and has the ball the longest or has the ball last, I think could be a huge factor into who's going to win this game. So what do you think this game could come down to?
I think you just nailed it. Look at the last. So when you look at the Bills, when they've had like possession has been helpful. Now there's been a few games where they haven't had the most time of possession and whatever, but in that week 6 matchup, they didn't have the ball a lot. They let Patrick Mahomes have it for way too long, right? So I think it's going to come down to creating the right sets of situations to stay away from turnovers and to possess the ball, because I hate that. I hate, like, some cliches are really funny. Like I think they're silly, but like, oh, defense travels. Well, so does the offense, right? But like, and also, like, like the best way to stop Patrick Mahomes is to keep him on the sideline. But it's actually pretty true, right? So at the end of the day, trying to maximize scoring opportunities. The thing about Patrick Mahomes that we've seen time and time again is that he can score fast, right? So that offense can score like in 0.0 seconds pretty much. So the interesting thing will be to have more big plays. So like the formula for beating the Patrick Mahomes led Chiefs, 6 of 9 losses since 2018 have come when the opposing team has had more big plays work out on offense. So passes of 20 plus, rushes of 10 plus. So basically a game breaking play, right? And if you look to see like that trend continues, like as long as they've had more, then great. If you've had 11 or more in a game, then it's, that's an even better opportunity for you to win. So 11 or more, it's 4-4 in eight times when that's happened. They're 4-4. But if you look to see kind of what was going on, it was not big plays in the last minute. It's like strategic big plays on like, in the first quarter or the second quarter. So those are things to look for. And by the way, the Bills have been very good at that. Not so much on the ground, but through the air, the big plays have been really helpful. Josh Allen, I think the rushing yards for Josh Allen will be higher than expected in this one. I think something closer to 40, just because I think the opportunity to navigate that front, especially if they're not bringing a bunch of pressure, will net more yards for him. So as long as Josh Allen can take care of the football, which we've seen him do, and then complete some of those big plays, that will keep the possession with the Bills offense and limit the amount of time that Patrick Mahomes is on the field.
Yeah, during the regular season, the Bills tied for second with 76 plays of 20 or more yards. And that's something that either team can pop off really at any moment, because you have those two quarterbacks who have the ability to chuck it down the field or can take it on their own. I also agree with you. I think Josh's rushing yards are going to be up also because this is the playoffs, and he is the type of quarterback that's like, I'm going to put the team on my back and do whatever it takes. We saw it go in the wrong direction against the Texans last season when he really was trying to do everything on his own, and it turned out not going right. But he's gotten smarter, but he still wants this win, and he still wants to do whatever he can for his team. So I could see him taking the ball in situations more often than not on scramble plays and things like that. But another interesting thing I think could be the trick plays in this game. Brian Daboll is known to dial those up, and in the playoffs, we could see some of those early, because these are two talented teams who might have to rely and thrive off of a drive where you have an insane play that they've been practicing for the last couple months and finally can bring it out and try it here on Sunday.
Totally. And one of the things that I love most about Josh Allen, and that goes back to both trick plays and regular plays, his ability to throw off platform. So I went back and measured, so off platform just means like if your hips aren't perfectly set and you're not in that perfect body dynamic where everything's in the right lines and, everything's like as set as you can be. Cause Josh Allen's base, like his hips are really strong, right? So he can chuck it. That's part of why it works, right? So interestingly enough, the drop off, these two quarterbacks both have great off platform throwing capabilities. Patrick Mahomes is the best that I've ever measured, but Josh Allen this season ranks 3rd. So pretty good, like pretty darn good. That will help with any sort of, like, let's say there's a trick play and it goes awry. It's okay. Don't worry about it. I mean, you could still he still gets you an opportunity to complete that pass or to make something happen. And obviously his strong base, his hips being thick, like thick, and sounds weird, but like being strong, right, is the opportunity to run and earn those extra yards as well, even after contact. So it's true. He's the exact prototype of a body that you would want to execute trick plays for sure.
Well, Cynthia, thank you so much for helping me break down this AFC Championship matchup against two really talented new wave next level quarterbacks. A lot of people call Josh Allen some of his facets that he has in his games there. Oh, that's like Patrick Mahomes. So we'll see if Josh Allen can really make a name for himself on Sunday, and maybe they can be on the even playing field here soon. We'll see how far the Bills can make it in the playoffs and possibly into the Super Bowl. But thank you for the numbers. Thank you for the insight. It's going to help our fans and me as we go into this important, crazy Sunday matchup.
Thank you so much for having me. I love Bills fans are my favorite. Don't tell anyone, but it's true. They're the most passionate fan base. I love me some Bills fans, and I'm really looking forward to this game. So thank you so much for having me and letting me talk to you a little bit about it today.
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Cynthia.